your taxes will never decrease. Your national debt will never be paid off. And for men across 3 centuries designed it exactly that way. What I'm about to show you isn't taught in any economics class because the people who control the system don't want you to understand how the trap actually works. Right now, you're paying interest on money that was created out of nothing. Money your government borrowed before you were born. Money you'll never stop paying for, and neither will your children or their children. This isn't a mistake. It's not bad policy. It's a machine built deliberately in 4 stages by 4 architects who understood one thing. Permanent debt creates permanent control. The blueprint was drawn in 1694. The machine was industrialized. In 1815, it went global in 1913, and in 1982, they made escape impossible. Let me show you exactly how they did it and why every dollar you earn feeds a system designed to never let you go. 1694. England is broke. 9 years of war with France has drained the treasury. King William needs £1.2 million, an astronomical sum. The government is desperate, and that's when William Paterson walks in with an offer that sounds too good to refuse. Paterson isn't offering to lend the government money. He's offering something far more valuable, the ability to create money out of thin air. His proposal: create the Bank of England, a private institution that will lend the government £1.2 million in exchange for one small detail: the debt never has to be repaid. Wait, stop right there. Read that again. The debt never has to be repaid. Only the interest, forever. Think about what that means. You borrow money, you pay interest. But the principal? It stays on the books permanently. You become a perpetual debtor and the lender becomes your permanent creditor. This wasn't a loan. It was a relationship, a power structure disguised as finance. Parliament approved it. The Bank of England was born. And from that moment forward, the British government became permanently indebted to a private bank. Taxes would flow to the bank as interest payments, not to pay off the debt, to service it forever. Paterson didn't just create a bank. He created a model, a template that would spread across the world. Because once you understand this trick, you realize something terrifying. Governments that can never escape debt can never escape control. But Paterson's model had a limitation. It only worked in one country. What came next would make it global. June 18, 1815. The Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon is facing his final defeat. But 200 miles away in London, Nathan Rothschild is about to pull off the greatest financial coup in history, not by fighting, but by knowing the outcome first. Rothschild's network of couriers gets him the news before the British government. Napoleon has lost. While London panics, believing Britain might lose, Rothschild starts buying British government bonds, massive quantities, at rock-bottom prices. When the truth arrives 24 hours later, the bond market explodes. Rothschild doesn't just make a fortune, he acquires a dominant position in British sovereign debt. And that's when he does something revolutionary. He makes government debt tradable. Before Rothschild, lending to governments was bilateral: one lender, one borrower, static, local. Rothschild turned it into a market. Bonds could be bought, sold, traded across borders. Sovereign debt became an asset class, a commodity, and Rothschild's bank became the middleman for governments across Europe. Here's why that matters. Once debt becomes tradable, it becomes interconnected. Britain owes Rothschild, France owes Rothschild, Austria owes Rothschild. If any one of them defaults, the whole system crashes. So none of them can default. They're locked into the web. Rothschild didn't just industrialize debt, he made it systemic. A network where every nation's survival depends on keeping the debt alive, not paying it off, keeping it flowing. Because the moment one thread breaks, the entire web collapses. And now the trap has gone international. But there's still one limitation. It requires gold, real, physical gold, to back the loans. That constraint is about to be removed. December 23, 1913. Most of Congress has left for Christmas. A small group of senators passes the Federal Reserve Act in a near-empty chamber. President Woodrow Wilson signs it the same day. And just like that, America creates a central bank. 103 years after killing the last one. But this isn't just another Bank of England clone. This is evolution. Because J.P. Morgan and his circle of bankers designed something Paterson and Rothschild never had. A central bank that can create money without gold. Let me show you the mechanism. Because this is where the trap becomes infinite. The U.S. government needs money. It doesn't raise taxes. It issues a bond, a promise to pay back the money plus interest. The Federal Reserve buys that bond. But here's the magic trick. The Fed doesn't have the money. It creates it. Out of nothing. A ledger entry. Digital ones and zeros. The government gets money that didn't exist. The Fed gets a bond-on asset that pays interest forever. And you get inflation. Because money was just created. But no goods or services were created to match it. Your purchasing power gets diluted to pay for government spending. But that's not even the trap yet. Here's the trap. Once the government spends that money into the economy, paying contractors, employees, programs it, circulates, it becomes the money supply. The economy now runs on debt-created money. If the government paid off the debt, that money would disappear. The economy would contract. Jobs lost. Businesses failed. Deflation. spiral, so the debt can't be paid off. It has to grow forever. The Federal Reserve didn't just create a central bank. It created a system where economic growth requires expanding debt, where stability means permanent borrowing, where the machine only works if it never stops. By 1971, Nixon severs the last link to gold entirely. Now there's no anchor, no limit. Debt can expand infinitely, and it does. U.S. national debt in 1913, $2.9 billion. Today, $36 trillion. Not because of waste, because the system requires it. But there's still one escape hatch. What if a country just walks away, refuses to pay, defaults and starts over? That loophole is about to be closed. August 12, 1982, Mexico's finance minister walks into the U.S. Treasury and says 3 words that will reshape the global economy. We can't pay Mexico's debt. $80 billion. Borrowed during the oil boom of the 1970s when interest rates were low and oil prices were high. But then Paul Volcker, chairman of the Federal Reserve, raises interest rates to 20% to crush U.S. inflation. Suddenly Mexico's debt payments triple. Oil prices collapse. Mexico is drowning, and they're not alone. Brazil, Argentina, Poland, the Philippines, dozens of developing nations hit the wall simultaneously. The Third World Debt Crisis, the biggest threat to the global financial system since the Great Depression. Here's the moment that matters. What happens next? If Mexico defaults, the banks holding their debt, Citibank, Bank of America, Chase goes. If they go insolvent, the U.S. banking system collapses. So the system faces a choice. Let countries default and watch the whole structure implode. Or make sure default becomes impossible. Volcker and the IMF choose option 2. They don't forgive the debt. They restructure it. New loans to pay off old loans. Lower interest rates but longer terms. Austerity programs, spending cuts, privatization, conditions that ensure the debt keeps flowing in, the country keeps paying. Mexico doesn't escape. It gets deeper. Because now it owes even more, and the IMF controls its budget. This becomes the model. Every debt crisis after 1982 follows the same script. Russia in 1998, Argentina in 2001, Greece in 2010, Sri Lanka in 2022. The pattern never changes. Countries can't pay, so they borrow more to pay the old debt, and the debt grows. Volcker didn't just save the banks, he closed the escape hatch. He made default impossible because now the entire global financial system is interconnected. Banks, governments, pension funds, insurance companies, holding each other's debt. If one major player defaults, everyone crashes. So no one is allowed to default. They restructure, refinance, roll it over, forever. The trap is now complete. For architects, 4 stages. One system. Let me show you what this looks like in your life right now. You're born into a country with national debt. That debt was created before you existed. You didn't vote for it. You didn't benefit from the spending, but you'll pay for it through taxes your entire life. When you take out a mortgage, you're borrowing money the bank created from nothing, the same way the Fed does. You pay it back with real labor, real hours of your life. But the bank, they created it with a keystroke. When your government stimulates the economy, they're issuing bonds the Federal Reserve buys with created money. That money enters circulation, prices rise. Your savings lose value. You didn't get the new money, but you paid for it through inflation. And here's the kicker. If you try to escape by gold, by Bitcoin, by hard assets, you're taxed on the gains. Not the real gains. The nominal gains. Inflation pushed the price up, but the government taxes you as if you profited. You can't opt out. You can't pay it off. Because the debt isn't designed to be paid off. It's designed to grow. To keep you inside the system, working, producing, paying interest on money that was created from nothing. Let me give you the numbers, because the scale is almost incomprehensible. Global debt, $307 trillion. That's not a typo, $307 trillion. Global GDP, total value of everything produced on Earth in a year is $105 trillion. We owe 3 times what we produce. U.S. national debt alone, $36 trillion. Interest payments, $1. $1 trillion per year. That's more than the defense budget. More than Medicare. The fastest growing line item in the federal budget is interest on old debt. Japan's debt to GDP ratio, 264%. Italy, 144%. Greece, 171%. These aren't struggling developing nations. These are advanced economies, permanently trapped. And here's what no one tells you. This debt will never be paid off. It can't be, because paying it off would require destroying the money supply, collapsing the economy, wiping out savings, pensions, assets. So instead, it grows. Every crisis, the solution is the same. Create more money, issue more debt, kick the can down the road. Because the alternative, letting the system collapse, is unthinkable. The people who designed this system understood something you're not supposed to realize. He who controls the debt controls the country. When your government is permanently indebted, it's permanently dependent. Dependent on bond markets, dependent on central banks, dependent on the institutions that buy its debt. It can't make decisions that threaten those institutions, because if they stop buying bonds, the government can't function. This is why fiscal discipline never happens. Why debt always grows? Why promises to balance the budget always fail? Because balancing the budget would mean shrinking the money supply, crashing asset prices, destroying the wealth of the people who own the debt. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. Permanent debt creates permanent control, and you're inside it. So what do you do with this information? First, understand that inflation is a tax, and when they print money, they're taxing your savings, your wages, your purchasing power. That's not a side effect, that's the mechanism. Second, position yourself accordingly. Hard assets, scarce resources, things that can't be created with a keystroke. Real estate, commodities, productive businesses, skills that retain value regardless of currency. Third, reduce personal debt. Because while the government can refinance forever, you can't. Every dollar you owe is a claim on your future labor, your freedom. Pay it down. Get liquid. Stay flexible. And fourth, and this is crucial, teach this to others. Because the system depends on ignorance. On people believing national debt is like household debt, that it will be paid off someday, that it's temporary. It's not temporary. It's permanent. By design. For men. For stages. 330 years. William Paterson made government debt permanent. Nathan Rothschild made it global and interconnected. J.P. Morgan made it infinite through central bank money creation. Paul Volcker made escape impossible through forced restructuring. And now you live inside the machine they built. A system where money is debt, where debt can never be repaid, where economic growth requires expansion of borrowing, where your taxes don't fund services, they service interest on loans created from nothing. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's monetary history. The documentation is public. The mechanisms are taught in economics courses, just not the implications. The question isn't whether the trap exists. The question is, what do you do now that you see it? Because once you understand the system, you can't unsee it. Every tax bill, every interest payment, every inflation report, you'll see the machine running, and you'll realize they designed a system you can never escape, but you can survive it if you know how it works.